What happens when you mix the Sega Genesis with the biggest pop star of the 1980s? You get Michael Jackson's Moonwalker, the game that helped the Sega Genesis put a dent into Nintendo's market share. Part of Sega's Genesis Does What Nintendo Don't campaign, Michael Jackson's Moonwalker is iconic to the Sega Genesis and will never see a remake or a port ever. Welcome to another viewer-voted review, the retro video game series where you, the viewer, get to choose what video game I review next. Last time we reviewed Jurassic Park for the Sega Genesis, and I gave you 4 choices. And with 33% of the vote, you chose Michael Jackson's Moonwalker for the Sega Genesis. If you missed the voting last time, don't worry, I'll have instructions on how to vote for the next game on the end of this video. With that out of the way, let's talk about Michael Jackson's Moonwalker for the Sega Genesis. I'll give you a brief history of the game, let you know my thoughts on it, and give you a pricing forecast to see if this game's value will go up, down, or stay the same. Michael Jackson's Moonwalker for the Sega Genesis was released in 1990 and is based on the 1988 short film of the same name. If you haven't watched the film, I would suggest doing so, but you wouldn't be lost in the game since the game is very loosely based on the movie. The video game actually takes place 40 minutes after the movie starts with Smooth Criminal, but also borrows music from Thriller as well, which was not featured in the movie. The premise of Moonwalker for the Sega Genesis is simple. Save children, who are based off of Katie, from the evil Mr. Big, who is played by Joe Pesci in the movie. The game has 5 stages based on the movie, with the graveyard being the exception, which was featured in Thriller. Each round has 3 acts, and at the beginning of each act you must save 5 children hidden throughout the area and fight enemies along the way. When you find all of the children, Bubbles the monkey hops on your shoulder and points you to where Mr. Big is located. Mr. Big sets his goons on Michael, and defeating them ends the act. Michael's moves are based off of his dance moves, mainly based on Smooth Criminal, but there are elements from other music videos. Jackson's power is based on how much health he has. The blue bar is maximum strength, yellow is lower strength, but he can still use magic, and red is close range combat only. And you also have a special move which drains health but can kill everything on the screen. And usually I use this at the end of an act since there are so many enemies on the screen at any given time. This game gets really difficult by the 3rd round. The enemies take more hits and do more damage. The caverns have you walking into caves and taking out several enemies before rescuing the children, and the last level gets really interesting because you can teleport to different sections of the stage. And you also have a bunch more elements trying to do you harm, like electric surging through pipes and laser turrets. After the acts have all been completed, you hop in a plane and battle Mr. Big himself. That's right, this game becomes a space shooter. Defeating Mr. Biggs gets you a congratulations and the credits roll. While the gameplay of Moonwalker does get repetitive, the challenge this game presents is that enemies keep respawning and the girls aren't always in the same spot every time. So in my opinion, that keeps Moonwalker fresh enough for me to keep coming back every now and then and giving it a go. As far as seeing a re-release or remake, well, don't hold your breath. Michael Jackson's Moonwalker for the Sega Genesis has only seen a retail release for the Sega Genesis in 1990. A lot of people suggest that the premise of the game might be controversial today. Michael is rescuing little kids, and in light of all the allegations that plagued Jackson for decades, many people might not want that game to be brought into the limelight anymore. But I don't think that the game's premise is really what's preventing this game from being re-released. I really think that it's because of licensing reasons. Michael has been dead for 10 years, and the rights of the features of this game are split between 3 companies. Sony owns the rights to the music, Warner Brothers owns the rights to the Moonwalker trademark, and the Jackson estate owns the rights to Michael's image. While there has been a Michael Jackson game in 2010 by Ubisoft, it was a Let's Dance spin-off with the music included. The other games that Michael has been involved in, Ready to Rumble and Space Channel 5, have not seen a re-release either. And because of this game having no re-releases on modern platforms, it means that Moonwalker for the Sega Genesis is subject to some serious price fluctuations. This game used to be pretty inexpensive and wasn't really considered a must-have until Michael Jackson passed away in June of 2009. The game saw a $40 spike after he passed away, and then in May of 2018, the game spiked with the documentary The Last Days of Michael Jackson, and then another spike after the Surviving Neverland documentary on HBO earlier in 2019. It doesn't appear that we'll see a spike for the 10th anniversary of his passing, but anything can happen. With a complete copy of Michael Jackson's Moonwalker flirting with $100 for the past 2 years, peaking at $120 in April of 2019. While the price has dropped to about $87, I don't think that you'll see this game drop lower than $50 anytime soon. The name recognition will continue to keep this game in the mainstream, and you could see it hit $150 before it will go lower than $70. If you really are interested in getting a copy of this game, I would wait until it goes closer to $70, which could be in the next few months before it starts to creep back up again in November. And that's the viewer voted review of Michael Jackson's Moonwalker for the Sega Genesis. A game that's fun, but it can get repetitive. I really wish there was a console version of the isometric beat 'em up that was released in arcades only. If you enjoyed Moonwalker for the Sega Genesis, you'll definitely want to try that if you come across the cabinet in a retro arcade. Now here are your 4 choices for the next viewer voted review. Metal Wolf Chaos for the Xbox, Bucky O'Hare for the NES, Ikaruga for the GameCube, and Minish Cap for the Game Boy Advance. You can vote on which game I'll review next by going to my community tab and voting on the poll there. I'll keep the poll going for a week and then get started on the most popular game. So, what did you think of Michael Jackson's Moonwalker? Do you think we'll ever see a re-release, or is it gone forever? Let me know in the comments below, and if you like this video, give it a like. It really helps YouTube recommend it to others. And if you're new here, in addition to these viewer voted reviews, I also have a series called Retronomics that takes a look at the factors affecting retro video game prices. My recent video was about how the angry video game nerd affects retro prices, and my next one will be about the Nintendo Game Boy. And if that's something that you're interested in, consider subscribing for future content. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Super Nicktendo, and I'll see you next time.